Entitled Karen goes to jail for feeding meat to a vegetarian kid. My friend's wife, Karen, promised a vegetarian mother that her daughter would be cared for at a birthday party. But Karen secretly had other plans. Instead of giving the girl vegetarian food as promised, she gave the girl meat just to prove that she could digest it. As it turned out, the girl couldn't digest it at all. The girl wound up in the hospital, and Karen wound up behind bars. Worst of all, this isn't even the first time she's done this. My friend and his entitled wife, Karen, have a 7-year-old daughter. This happened during the girl's birthday in April. One of the guests, a 6-year-old girl, is vegetarian. Her family has been vegetarian since before she was born, so she's never tasted meat. In case you don't know, this means that her stomach doesn't know how to digest meat, and in case she decides to stop being a vegetarian one day, she'll have to introduce it to her diet slowly. And from what I'm told, she'll have to do it with the help of a medical professional. Karen promised the vegetarian girl's mother that she would have a special dish for the vegetarian daughter. Karen was going to make homemade pizza, so she said that she would make a vegetarian one for the girl. When the mother and her daughter got to the party, Karen pointed the mother to a separate plate of pizza. The mother left for work, thinking everything was fine. The kids eat, and, according to my friend, vegetarian daughter ate all of her pizza with no problem. Apparently, she said that it tasted different, but Karen told her that was because she uses a special recipe for the dough. This much is true. Time passes, and the daughter complains of stomach pain. Suddenly, she hurls her guts out and cries, calling her parents. Karen gets angry and yells, "What are you doing? Do you know how much that meat cost me? It was of very good quality." The guests make her admit that she put a lot of meat on the girl's pizza to show that she's just a spoiled brat. The poor girl has eaten a lot, so everyone panics. They call the emergency number, and the daughter leaves in an ambulance while Karen is arrested. The daughter needs a stomach pump and spends several days in the hospital because her stomach barely accepts water. She eventually returns home, but must limit herself to certain foods until her stomach settles. According to my friend, the daughter was born with some health problems, but we don't know if that's what caused the situation to be serious enough to require hospitalization. This has never happened to anyone I know, so I don't know if hospitalization is normal in this situation. I only knew about not being able to eat meat all at once because a friend who is ex-vegetarian told me about it. The trial has just ended. Karen must pay a large compensation to the vegetarian family. She will also spend a long time in jail, as she has shown no remorse for what she's done. Apparently, she kept stating that the daughter was at fault and that all children should eat meat. When the judge handed down the sentence, Karen shouted that everyone was against her for trying to give protein to a girl who desperately needs it because her parents are starving her. My friend has had a pretty bad time, but the vegetarian mother has talked to him and doesn't blame him, since it was shown that he didn't know what Karen was going to do. He was out of town for a month for a family emergency and came back the morning of his daughter's birthday. He has voluntarily submitted all communication he had with Karen at that time. Now that the trial's over, he's asking for a divorce. Taking everything into account, Karen will not be entitled to anything. Their daughter will still be a minor when Karen gets out of jail, but it's highly unlikely that she'll be awarded any custody. At most, she will receive visits at a safe point. Their daughter is in therapy, and the poor thing is very confused. Her father's explained the situation to her, and she knows it's not the vegetarian girl's fault that her birthday was ruined. Apparently, Karen has done this to her brother before when he became a vegetarian, but he could recognize the taste of meat and immediately confronted her. I hope Karen learns the lesson this time. I'm glad to say that the girl has recovered and is still friends with my friend's daughter. There have been some doubts about this story, partly because most entitled parent posts tend to read like revenge fantasies. Case in point, this Karen spends years in jail and loses her entire family over a first-time offense without even trying to argue in court that she fed this girl the wrong pizza by mistake. Since nobody knew what she was planning, she could have gotten away with that if she hadn't blurted out to everyone that the girl had just wasted her meat. It also feels like a revenge fantasy because there have been a weird number of anti-vegan posts on Reddit lately, and this one reads just like them, but with the meat eater as the villain. If this is real, Karen probably won't serve her whole sentence, and there are plenty of steps she could take to get at least partial custody back. It's happened under far worse circumstances. So, as the original poster says, let's hope she learned a lesson. You don't get to make dietary choices for another person's kid. If you have a problem with their needs, then you have the option of being stubborn and refusing to offer a vegetarian option, but only if you're upfront with the parents, so they can decide whether they want their daughter at your party. Doing something crazy to prove a point that doesn't need to be made almost always ends badly. Karen doesn't see a problem with her boys throwing rocks at my dog. It was a pretty warm day, but we're lucky to live close enough to a lovely open estate with a calm river flowing through where we can take the dog for a swim. There's a particularly lovely spot that dogs and kids use to play in the area. This is where we took the beast. He normally jumps in and swims in circles for about 20 minutes, keeping away from everyone. Kids learn how to skip stones on the water, which is kind of cute. Then these two boys come. No clue why, but they found it entertaining to pick up the heaviest rocks they could find and drop them back in the water, almost at each other's toes. I was a bit wary, but I left it. Not my job to educate someone else's kid. Until a rock about the size of my head started flying much farther than the previous ones, straight towards my dog, who was swimming and minding his own business. One of the boys decided to launch it full force at my dog. Me and my partner both screamed in terror. If that huge rock lands on my dog's head, he's definitely going to get badly hurt. It landed with a big splash right in front of my dog's nose. At the same volume and with the same breath, I looked at the boys. "Don't throw rocks at my dog. Thank you." The boys turned, wound their necks in, and said, "Sorry." And that would have been that, until their mother decided to get involved, shouting at us from about 100 meters away, "You don't have to shout like that. It was an accident." I said, "Accident or not, I don't want my dog to get hurt." She just kept yapping. "But it was an accident. You really shouldn't shout." My partner said, "They shouldn't throw huge rocks around others." And the mother just kept yapping all the same. I just turned my back on her, saying to my partner, "Whatever, it isn't worth it." Then I continued watching my dog swim. Thankfully, she decided not to continue arguing. I guess the fact that my partner is a tall, bald, tattooed guy with twice the shoulder breadth than mine may have an effect on people's will to continue arguments. I just wonder, when little Willie breaks another kid's leg with a rock like that, will the mother still insist that it was an accident? Awesome way to teach kids about responsibility, actions and consequences and all that stuff. Yes, OP, Karen will definitely keep saying it's an accident. In the eyes of some mothers, their kid can do no wrong. They have no interest in teaching their kid important lessons. Everyone else should learn how to love their kid no matter what he does. But if someone else throws a rock at her baby boy, that would be a totally different story. To be honest, I was almost ready to comment that at least this Karen didn't push the argument. She actually wasn't much of a Karen about it at all. But in a weird way, that's almost worse. At least if they kept arguing, the boys would have heard more of OP's side and why their actions were unsafe, long before that rock got anywhere near the dog. If they don't start learning these things, then it's not a matter of if someone will get hurt, but a matter of when. I can almost see why OP's partner was ready to keep arguing. But maybe OP was right that it would have been a waste of time. What do you think? Should OP have pressed the issue? Leave us a comment and let us know what you'd say to this Karen. My parents starved me for 3 days to punish me for having a seizure. On Thursday, March 31st, I told my parents I would be late from school 30 minutes maximum because I needed to speak to a teacher. I had a friend come with me who's epileptic. After I finished talking to my teacher, I was going to head home. Now, my parents actually don't allow me to have friends or speak to other people, so they would consider it a terrible mistake even making a friend, even though my friend is such an amazing person. When we were heading downstairs, my friend had a seizure. This was the first time in my life seeing someone have a seizure, although I've had them myself for 5.5 years. I was the only one who caught her because I was with her. I put her in the recovery position and started a call for any teachers around to help. Obviously, I'm not going to abandon my friend just for the sake of listening to my parents, so I stayed with her until the paramedics came and got her to the hospital. By now, I was already late, and I wanted to see how she was doing because I was so worried about her. Keep in mind, I had a brick phone and it was in my locker downstairs. I'm obviously not going to leave my friend to seize just so I can call my parents saying that I'm going to be late. That's just stupid. After my friend was taken to the hospital, me and my other friend went to visit her. But my friend got the wrong hospital, so we came back after we got a text from her saying that she was okay and feeling better. So I figured I'd go back to the college, get my stuff, and head home. Then I start to seize while at college, in and out, having a total of 16 seizures. Now, I've told the college previously not to tell my parents if I have seizures, due to the way my parents mistreat me. So they didn't call, and I stayed in the college until 10:30 p.m. The paramedics were called 3 times, but I refused to go to the hospital out of fear for my parents. The 3rd time, the paramedics called my mom to pick me up. I went insane. I started to self-harm in the first aid room, trying to run away because I knew my parents would hurt me even more, and I know they'll trap me at home. I told the teacher my parents will try to trap and harm me. They said that they'll tell my parents that they expect me to be in class tomorrow. My parents came and started speaking to security about how my seizures are fake. Apparently, I'm just doing it for attention and all that. My parents said I've been to doctors and they said there's nothing wrong with me. Although I've got evidence, including letters of cancellation for my appointments, since my parents forced me to cancel them. I had no tests done on me yet, so my parents were clearly lying. Then the first aider who deals with me a lot said to my parents, "Well, I've dealt with seizures before, and there's no way these seizures are fake." My parents took me home and punished me by starving me for 3 days. They trapped me at home the next day and didn't allow me to do anything but work as a slave at home. And by this, I mean that even when they starved me, my mom stayed in the kitchen so that when I cooked meals for the family, she could keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't eat anything. I genuinely felt like ripping myself to pieces and burning myself. My dad then started threatening my life, saying he'd end me and that he wants me gone. I was afraid that if I had a seizure that left me unconscious, he would attack me. So I jumped from my window, which is on the second floor, and ran away. The police are still investigating, but there's a court case on the 9th of September. It's a good thing the law is getting involved. One of the reasons I don't read entitled parent stories more often is because a lot of them are like this, but without the hope that the OP will break out of their situation anytime soon. It can be really disheartening. In this case, while it's upsetting that parents like this even exist, at least OP seems to be on the way out. Since OP has evidence that they've been skimping on their child's healthcare, there's no way this case is going to sway in the parents' favor. This OP needs to get away from their parents and into the care of someone who will offer the support they need. Nobody should have to suffer this much physical and mental pain all at once. Church Karen holds up the Starbucks line while waiting for their entire congregation to arrive. I'm a 40-year-old white disabled man. I use either a manual wheelchair or a store's courtesy mobility aid to move about the store. This story takes place in a Starbucks, inside a local chain of stores called Fred Meyer. They're part of Kroger, but maintain the Fred Meyer name. This occurred in Vancouver, Washington. About 2 weeks ago, I went in on a blisteringly hot day to get my frappe, then to get some much-needed shopping done. If you enter the north side entrance of this Fred Meyer, the Starbucks is right there. I moved my cart around to get in line. Presently, 2 women I wager were Pan-Pacific Asian were at the head of the line. Behind them, an older white male, somewhere in his 60s, was leaning against a cart with stuff in it. And man, that dude looked furious about something. I hadn't been in line 2 minutes when this man cursed something under his breath and shook his head, walking off. I figured, his loss, my gain, right? Oh, I'd be so wrong. I got behind the 2 Asian women and waited to be served. One of the attendants, someone I considered a very good friend behind the counter, moves over and discreetly whispers, "You're going to be waiting a while. Brace yourself." I had no idea what they meant. I would soon enough. That's when a gaggle of about 5 young boys aged around 9 to 13 came over. The woman led the boys to the ordering station, and they ordered. They then went to the presentation counter. I started to inch forward, but the second woman holds her hand outstretched in the universal "stop right there" gesture. "Oh, we're not done," she said firmly. I was confused. A minute later, from that north side entrance, another 10 or so teenagers and young adults walk in. The woman holds me back as, one by one, every teen and young adult was shown to the ordering station, cutting ahead of me and more people that had gathered behind me. I could hear these people behind me reacting, from understandable ways like, "Oh, for F's sake," to things that would probably get me banned if I even quoted them, things about the woman's race. Just when I thought the horror was over, and having now realized why the old man had stormed off, a third gaggle of now full adults came in. The 2 women showed them to the front of the line. The people behind me were about to give these women a piece of their minds. My friend behind the counter said they'd been at this for nearly an hour. It wasn't just their family, but their entire church, too. "The entire church?" I stage whispered to my friend. They sadly nodded and went back to work. At this point, I decided I'd be better off just taking my money, buying the ingredients, and making my own frappes at home. I tap out of the line, fearing someone was going to get unruly. No epic conclusion, no fight, no witty banter, just me having to sulk and go home and make my own drinks. I've seen some pretty terrible line etiquette from Karens. But I've thankfully never had someone make me wait while they called in 30 other people. At most, maybe 3 or 4. But this really takes the cake. It's actually pretty amazing that the baristas let them do this, and that not one person in line actually got in the Karen's faces about it. On that note, a lot of people had a problem with the fact that this OP mentions the woman being Asian. He explains that he did this because he wasn't sure if any cultural differences might have been at play. That's actually a pretty reasonable concern. Different cultures have different line etiquette. For instance, if this had happened in England, these women almost definitely would have been called out on their behavior. But in the US, people like this seem to get away with it more often for some reason. So if anyone knows whether there actually are cultural differences at play here, feel free to share in the comments, because I'd really like to know. Also, let us know in the comments what you think of OP's reaction. Most commenters think he should have confronted these women, but that's easy to say when you aren't the one dealing with the situation. What do you think you would have done? Would you have called them out, or simply walked away and gotten your caffeine fix elsewhere? Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now, or a Karen will sue you.